Tomorrow night, we got Errol Spence Jr. going up against Danny Garcia on PBC pay-per-view, and this is for the WBO and IBF Welterweight Championships. Just a little background on both these fighters. Errol Spence is 26-0 with 21 knockouts. Danny Garcia is 36-2 with 21 knockouts. Before I give my opinion on this fight, Nate, I'll start with you. Who you got winning and why?
First of all, I feel like this is going to go the distance. Both men are great fighters. Both men got power hits. Both men can jab. But one thing that both men kind of differ a bit is with the defense. Errol Spence is a good defender. Danny Garcia is a little different. I mean, he's good at defense, but he's not as good as Errol Spence. You know what I mean? But one thing I will give Danny Garcia credit for is he's good at breaking defenses. But the problem is, if you're gonna do that, you gotta hold your own against defenses as well, because both men are power hitters, both men are jabbers, both men can break defenses. I think this is really gonna go a distance. But I'm gonna make a bold prediction right here. I think Errol Spence walks away by unanimous decision.
I agree. I'll say this. So going to some strengths, I'll start with Errol Spence. So Errol Spence is obviously the A side, and I mean, don't get me wrong, nobody wants to see Spence versus Crawford as much as me. Nobody wants to see it more than me. I want to see those. I want to see those titles unified, and I want to see one winner. But that's a different talk for a different time if that fight happens. As for Spence, one thing about Spence is he is so relentless on offense. He is so relentless. What he likes to do is, because he's kind of a long guy, he's a big dude because he's long. What he likes to do is he likes to use that jab to back up the other fighter. And if the fighter comes in, he'll put the hook on them. So they can back up even more. When he does that, what happens is most likely they start leading up to the ropes. And when they get to the ropes, he just ends up wailing on them. And so Errol Spence, here's the one thing this is one of the main reasons why I think Errol Spence is going to come out with a win. I'll go to his two fights with Mikey Garcia, who at the time when he fought him was coming off an insane win against Adrian Broner. And the guy looked like an amazing fighter, which he is. Mikey Garcia is a really good fighter. But then Errol Spence came and just beat him up badly for 12 rounds. He the stats for Spence were 345 out of 1,082. He threw 1,082 punches in that one fight, landed 31.9%. Mikey Garcia, 75 for 406. He landed 18.5. Now, why is that concerning to me? Danny Garcia's fight against Keith Thurman, will start off with that. 130 punches for 434. And then 168 for 472 against Sean Porter. And both those fights he lost. So because he threw less punches than the opposing fighter, even though I believe he won because he landed the better percentage than both of them. Because he threw less, they gave it to the other guys because the other guys were the aggressive. Danny Garcia, I don't think he can be an aggressor like Errol Spence can. Errol Spence in his fight against Sean Porter had 221 punches out of 745, and opposed to Sean Porter's 172 out of 744. So if you look at it, and Sean Porter threw two more punches than what Sean Porter did against Danny Garcia. So the problem here I'm seeing is that Errol Spence is going to be too much an aggressor. And because he's going to be the aggressor, I agree it's going to go to distance because Danny Garcia got a good chin. But the reason why I believe this is going to go to distance and the reason why I think Errol Spence is going to win very unanimously is because Errol Spence I believe he will be the aggressor for most of this fight because Danny Garcia's style is not the aggressor. Danny Garcia is a great counterpuncher. You know what I'm saying? He knows how to do that. And I think that's a way that Danny Garcia could win if he has a chance because the problem with Errol Spence is when he attempts to jab, he leaves openings for the left hook. Because the problem with Errol Spence, and I remember Roy Jones said this, and I didn't notice it until I looked at the highlights, and I was like, oh my God, he does do this, and that's a problem. When Errol Spence jabs, he steps. He literally steps. He doesn't, you know what I'm saying? When he jabs, he steps. And when he steps, that's something you can't do because you're leaning more into a punch. And when you jab, you're leaving something open. So if Danny Garcia is as good as breaking the guard like you say he is, which I know he is, he could land a few good shots on Errol Spence. And another thing with Errol Spence is he has good punches, but they can be routine. They can sometimes be routine. In a sense, what that means is they can kind of be repetitive. So like if you were to study him really good and really well, you can kind of see what the punches are going to come next and you can kind of avoid them. And that's the problem. His combos are decent, but he can fire. But you can definitely fire back with him. They're not fast enough to the point where like it's like remember what I like to compare it to is like Manny Pacquiao. When Manny Pacquiao used to hit you with combos, it just never stopped. You know what I'm saying? Like you had no time to go back on offense. You had to cover up because if not, most likely you were leaving your chin open and Manny Pacquiao was going to knock you out. Errol Spence has good combos, but they're not as fast as Manny Pacquiao's, which means you do have room and time to kind of get a couple hits in on Errol Spence. You know what I'm saying? And it only takes one hit in boxing. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter how good of a boxer you are. It only takes one hit. Um, what's underrated about Errol Spence? His right hooks and uppercuts. His right hooks and uppercuts because he's a left-handed because his left hand is so dangerous. People don't understand how dangerous his right hooks and uppercuts are. They kind of sneak in and they kind of give him a lot of punches landed, and that matters on the judges' scorecards. Um, but as for Danny Garcia, he's very flat-footed. And a lot of people criticize him for that. Sorry, my phone went off, but a lot of people criticize Danny Garcia for being flat-footed. But what people don't understand is when he's flat-footed, he his balance for combos is so much better. You know what I'm saying? Like so he can land a good 2, 3, 4 punches on Errol Spence if that's what he wants to do. The problem with the flat-footed though is you have less power in your punches. And so, with that being said, that could be a problem because again, usually when a champion faces a challenger, the judges most likely go to the champion if it goes to the distance. You know what I'm saying? It's happened many, many times. So, like in boxing history. So, with that being said, now don't get me wrong, there has been some robberies in which challenger has won. I agree, or challenger won cleanly. That's true. But with that being said, Danny Garcia only option might be to knock out Errol Spence, which I don't know if he can do. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, Danny Garcia, he packs the punch. He really does have good power. Despite the 21 knockouts out of 38 fights, he does have good power. Although Danny Garcia, in my opinion, he could kind of be one-dimensional. You know what I'm saying? Like it kind of seems again, he's also kind of routine with his fighting as well. Um, with that being said, I think Errol Spence wins by unanimous decision. I don't think it's going to be close. I think Errol Spence definitely wins. Danny Garcia is a good fighter, though. He really is. But Errol Spence, the type of guys he's fought in his career, it's unbelievable. Like he's beaten Mikey Garcia, who at the time was undefeated. He beaten Sean Porter. He's knocked down Sean Porter actually, which only 2 guys done, which is him and I think Adrian Broner. Those are the only 2 times I've seen Sean Porter get knocked down. If somebody else knows how many times, then let me know. But those are the only times I've ever seen it. He's beaten Lamont Peterson. He's beaten Kell Brook. He's beaten so many of these good fighters, Errol Spence. And Danny Garcia, he's got a good resume on his own too. Again, he's fought Sean Porter but lost. He fought Keith Thurman but lost. He beat Lamont Peterson. He beat Paulie Malignaggi, who's a good fighter in his own right. Adrian Granados, he beat him. Brandon Rios. So he has good fighters, but compared to Errol Spence, the guys he's fought are champions now, opposed to who Danny Garcia fought, who was in the past. You know what I'm saying? Brandon Rios, that's in the past now. Granados, that's in the past. Paulie Malignaggi, he's retired. So if I got to give the edge to everything, it's going to Errol Spence. Now, one problem with Errol Spence I'm having, he says he's 100%. If everybody remembers, he got into that fatal car accident when the car flipped. Are you 100% for this fight? You could be 100% physically, but mentally, did that take a toll on you? You know what I'm saying? Because it's been a while since Errol Spence stepped in that ring. I think it's been almost over a year. So does he have enough to get into? Is he 100% physically healthy to get into that ring? Which I think he is, or else he wouldn't be, fighting tomorrow. But that's the biggest concern when it comes to Errol Spence is if that car accident took a toll on you for a long distance as of now. So with that being said, I don't think it did. I think Errol Spence, he looks great. He looks like he's in phenomenal shape. Same thing with Danny Garcia, but I just think Errol Spence beats him. But if Danny Garcia wants to beat him, he's either gonna have to be the aggressor, or he's gonna have to knock him out, which I can't see neither one of those things happening. So give me Errol Spence unanimous decision.
Absolutely. And what's the game? What's the fight on again?
The fight is on PBC pay-per-view.
Yeah, so make sure you tune into that fight. Make sure you tune into that fight tomorrow night. It's gonna be a good one.